college, you do something called the college report card, click, and all of the data, the graduation rates were given disaggregated by high school grades, the amount of value-added reading, writing, critical thinking, the employment, all of those critical pieces of consumer information should be one click from the homepage, not buried.
Yeah. My second comment is, and you may all know about this, but I work with the UC-DC program, which places students in internships in DC, or I help you find internships.
Good program.
So there's also an equivalent in Sacramento, and then UC in local government. So you may know about it, but internships are key.
I agree completely with no buts. Thank you very much for making that important point. It's really right. Yes?
I agree with you in terms of like the liberal establishment sort of monoculture that's prevalent here. And I'm wondering, firstly, are there any particular areas in the academic fields that you think are particularly safe from that kind of liberalism? And secondly, in terms of marketable skills, right, is there an area that you think is most marketable?
I'll get to answer those questions. I would have thought that most economics departments are usually a bastion of non-liberal thought. But I was told tonight, and it was just because I know nothing about the economics department, that this is a very leftist economics department here. So, safe places, at the risk of sounding pretty obvious, but clearly, you know, the physics, things that are clearly apolitical. But even, I would imagine the physics department, for example, would avoid everything, like related to nuclear power or defense or, bastions. I think it's more, the right answer is which professors. I know there's a philosophy professor named John Searle, right? And he's old now. I don't know what he's like now, but I know he's a conservative. He's not a liberal. Arthur Jensen used to be a professor here. They're letting all the conservatives die out, replacing them, of course, only with hard leftists. So I think it's got to be on a professor-by-professor basis and an extracurricular basis with regard to marketable. Maybe this is just a recency effect because Casey and I were talking before. He was almost apologetic about his having majored in rhetoric, which is his major. He thought it was not practical. I would call it one of the most practical majors of all. Because that is one of the few majors that explicitly is about teaching you to think more rigorously and write more rigorously. And that is, indeed, lives up to the liberal arts ideal. The brochure is talking about, oh, we teach you how to think and whatever, but if you really think about the English major, how deconstruction and Derrida-oriented it is. I don't think they teach you to think. I think they make you more of an ideologue. But I think rhetoric would be something that really would likely teach you to think. I also think, by the way, that being on the debate team, Berkeley has a really good debate team. And being on the debate team is an excellent way to improve your thinking skills.
Just in response to this question, Chancellor Birgeneau is a physics professor, incidentally. But in my experience, the material science and chemical engineering departments are quite balanced.
Yeah, that's what I think. But,
material science and chemical engineering, and material science in particular has a strong plurality of libertarians.
That's hard sciences. The question is in the humanities and social sciences. Does anybody know if within the humanities and social sciences, is there a department here that is not liberal?
I chose the classics department, particularly for that reason. I think the subject matter, as the professors disagree with your point, lends itself to a political understanding.
Yeah, classics would make sense. Any other? I mean, that's very interesting. Can any of you name another department that is in the social sciences and humanities that is not liberal here? Wow, that's pretty telling in itself.
Yeah, it's a monoculture.
Monoculture is the word. It's like in Napa, they only grow grapes. It's a dangerous monoculture.
Yeah.
Sorry, is this specifically undergrad departments or departments as a whole?
I'm not knowledgeable enough to know whether there's differentiation between the graduate and undergraduate departments. I do know when I was a graduate student in education at Berkeley, they were pretty apolitical then. But now, I get the alumni newsletters, so I see everything that they're doing. It's all wildly leftist stuff. It's like, for example, I see that in the California public schools, programs for intellectually gifted kids have been eviscerated. And so bright kids who are the kids who have the greatest potential to solve our social problems, etc., are being denied their right to an appropriate level of education. Everybody, bright or slow, should be, everybody should get at least an appropriate level of education. But the school education at Berkeley is obsessed with only providing more resources to help low-achieving kids to, quote, lower the achievement gap. But bright kids are being left to you know, whatever they can get on their own, and they do not necessarily live up to their potential if ignored. And I think that's terribly sad. That's Berkeley's education part, yeah.
I'm just curious if you have ever heard of Deep Springs College?
I love it.
Okay, I was going to say, I know you
25 students, really smart, they work the farm during the day, really great, wonderfully transformative professors, intellectual, love Deep Springs, good example.
Likewise, Cooper Union in New York City.
Is it number? I don't know. I know Cooper Union is small and it's free and it's architecture and art and all that. Are they? I don't know enough. I had always thought that they were, despite their being so small, that they are actually, the professors are quite theoretical. Am I wrong?
I mean, the art department I know is very theoretical.
Yeah.
But it's actually a BFA, so you would get a bachelor's of fine arts.
So what? If it's theoretical, it's still, you know, it's like I
So
said.
there
You
are
know,
classes in both theory and practice, so you get a balanced degree.
if it is great. I'm not knowledgeable enough to know about the art department of Cooper Union. Okay, we are at 8:29. I want to end as I like to leave on time. I know you want to get out of here. I end every speech that I've ever given in my life with the same story. Am I lazy? Because I promised my father I would. Why? Just because I do it just to keep my promise to my father? No. Because I've been to 1,000 speeches in my life. I get more people telling me that was the most valuable thing I did than anything else. Speak yourself, whatever you may have gotten in this, I hope this is even going to be more valuable. Although it has nothing to do with this topic. The year was 1939. The town was Schertz, Poland. My father was a teenager, living with his brother and his parents. And there was a knock on the door. And my father opened the door, and it was two Nazis in black boots. Most surprising is, unlike in the movies, the Nazis didn't yell. They whispered. They said, "You will be out of your house with only what you can carry on your back by noon tomorrow, or else." The next day, there were 12 Nazis in a truck with bayonets and wrested the Jews out of their homes. And this time they weren't whispering, "House!" And they took very young and the infirm, and they put them on one truck. They put the able-bodied people and they put them on another truck. My father never saw the rest of his family again. After his brother did come with him on that truck, but anyway. Bottom line is, he and 11 men escaped from a concentration camp by digging a tunnel underneath the fortunately sandy soil. And fortunately, he was in a concentration camp barrier right next to the barbed wire fence. And they used the slats of the bed to hold up the soil to keep it from collapsing. Anyway, he and 11 men escaped into the Black Forest, where he lived for a year, thanks to the goodwill of the Christians who were living in that forest. At the end of the war, he was dumped on a cargo boat and dropped in the Bronx, New York. Without a penny to his name, without a word of English, no money, no family, nothing except the scars of the Holocaust tortures. What did he do? Did he go into therapy to process the problem? Did he, well, what he did was, he took any job. No job was beneath him. He took a job selling shirts in a factory in Harlem. And what did he do at the end of the day when he was tired? He didn't say, "I'm tired, I'm going to go get drunk." He went to Roosevelt High School in the Bronx to learn English, because he knew he didn't want to spend his whole life at minimum wage working in a dead factory. Where he met my mom, who was also a Holocaust survivor, also in Roosevelt High School in the Bronx, learning English. Great. On Saturday morning, what did he do? He said, "I'm exhausted, I worked all day in the factory, I worked at night learning English, I'm going to watch Saturday morning football?" No. He went to the owner of the factory, and he says, "Can I buy the shirts that I sewed during the week wholesale and sell them retail out of a cardboard box in the streets of Harlem?" Bought those shirts for $1, sold them for $1.50 on the street. What did he do with his money? He said, "I worked hard all day, I went to school at night, I worked on Saturday selling shirts, I'm going to go get drunk, I'm having a good time." No. Good libertarian that he was. He saved up enough money for the first and last month's rent on the only store he could afford, a smelly, disgusting little hole in the wall on 105 Moore Street in Brooklyn. On one side was a live chicken market with the smell of stale blood redolent, merging on the other side with a Puerto Rican deli that specialized in chicharrones, which is deep fried pork intestines, and that smell was wafting, and my father's store was in the middle. Little clothing store. And because the store was so small, he had to have most of his merchandise out on the street on pieces of plywood with sawhorses underneath. Because it was a terrible neighborhood, people would just come by and steal the stuff. They just run by and steal the stuff all the time. So he needed to have somebody to watch while he was in the store dealing with a customer. So when I got old, and he couldn't afford to hire anybody, so when I got old enough to at least vaguely look like somebody who was a security force, I would go and help him on Saturdays and stand out in front of the store. And one day, business was quiet, and I remember leaning against a meter, a parking meter that was there, and I can still picture it, and my father was there, and I said, "Daddy, how come you never, or so rarely, talk about the Holocaust?" And he said, "Martin," this I'll never forget, he said, "Martin, the Nazis took 5 years from my life. I'm not going to let them have 1 minute more." He said, "Martin, never look back. Always take the next baby step forward." And I think that there is no better advice that has helped me in my life. We've all had crap happen to us. And the winners are those who do not look back, but think about taking the next baby step forward. And I thank you all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nemko.